That's the image, helping you to escape from the smoke.
A Broadcasting Hall of Famer is hanging up the headphones after more than 65 years in radio. Leigh Kamman is going to host the Jazz Image for the final time Saturday night, wrapping up 34 years on Minnesota Public Radio.
Loyal fans will certainly miss him, but Kamman's decided at age 85 it's time to take a break, maybe even write a book. In looking for material, Kamman should start with his own remarkable journey through the world of jazz. KARE-11's John Croman has his story in tonight's Extra.
St. Paul, Minnesota. Day gives way to twilight. But as darkness descends upon the river city, you're not alone with your thoughts.
The Jazz Image, that weekend journal.
A familiar voice will transport you through time on a magic carpet made of music.
We take you overseas, bring you back home, border to border.
The man at the mic, Leigh Kamman, is host of the Jazz Image, now nearing the end of its 34-year run on Minnesota Public Radio.
Sounds of Blackness, Grammy Award-winning group.
For Leigh, it's time to retire after more than 65 years broadcasting and promoting jazz.
I'm tracking 85, and I'm rusting, R-U-S-T-I-N-G.
He plans to write a textbook about the history of jazz radio. Let's hope he mentions a guy named Leigh Kamman.
This is Leigh Kamman from Freddy's, America's newest and smartest jazz club.
He caught the jazz bug in the 1930s, working a summer job at a lake resort near Glenwood. The owners would spin platters at night.
We would hear this music floating through the air, and it would be Bessie Smith, it would be Duke Ellington, and it would be Andy Kirk and Mary Lou Williams and the Clouds of Joy, and that was the beginning of it.
While still a senior at St. Paul Central, he landed his first gig as a gopher at WMIN, recording local bands.
And we carried all the gear, the microphones and the wire and all that.
Before long, Leigh could be heard going live from places like Mitch's Roadhouse in Mendota.
Welcome to Mississippi Jazz, or Mill City style as we call it.
Next stop, Duluth, where one night in 1942, he introduced an aspiring young bassman, Oscar Pettiford, to legendary tenor sax player Coleman Hawkins.
Coleman looked over at his bass and looked at him, and he said, play something for me.
Pettiford joined Hawk on stage and soon ascended to the ranks of jazz elite. Leigh landed in the ranks of Uncle Sam's Army, hosting and producing live radio shows at a military hospital in Denver.
The Medical Department of the United States Army invites you to join us for 30 minutes of popular music.
Post-war, it was back to the Twin Cities jazz scene, and an unforgettable moment in 1946 when he drove Duke Ellington to the Hotel St. Paul for a newspaper interview.
As we approached the elevators, we were directed by the bellhop to take the freight elevator. And that was a signal. So we never got to that interview. We turned about.
One of the greatest American composers somehow wasn't good enough to ride the elevator at the St. Paul.
It had been a long day for Duke Ellington, and we drove him through the night back to his hotel.
Track 6.
Fast forward 61 years to another night in St. Paul. Leigh and crew prepped for the latest installment of the Jazz Image.
9:05.
Okay, I got it here.
The show will run 3 hours, but must be timed out in advance down to the very second. Once in the studio, he'll get some wiggle room from his distinctive filler music.
That's the image, helping you to escape from the smoke.
The voice of Swedish singer Alice Babs in a rare recording with Ellington is the show's signature sound.
Complimentary filler, and the voice of Alice Babs from the land of the midnight sun.
On this night, we'll also hear a less familiar voice from the 1950s.
Love isn't everything, not what the poet sings, that all else but loving is vain.
While the song plays, Leigh studies the track list with a magnifying glass, but he knows it by heart.
And that was Patty McGovern with a Tom Talbot arrangement of Patty's Message.
What he doesn't tell the listeners, Patty McGovern, the woman on the CD, was his wife at the time and the mother of his 2 daughters.
Boy, she's way up there, not because just because of what she has to offer.
He followed her to New York in the 50s and landed a job at WOV in Harlem, where he rubbed elbows with jazz greats at the Palm Cafe and interviewed legends like Charlie Parker.
Well, what would you recommend our listeners going out and relaxing to or listening to?
Turned out the bebop virtuoso was deeply into classical.
I was saying just in the classicals, Stravinsky's Firebird, Rite of Spring.
And that was a stunning telephone interview.
He won't dare try to define jazz, but defers to what Ellington once told him in an interview.
He said, it's freedom.
The symbol of America is freedom. And without freedom of expression, you can't have jazz.
The tools of his trade have changed, and yet Leigh's instruments, his voice and his mind, transcend technology.
I hope you enjoy what you hear. Stay with us all night long.
Saturday nights won't be the same. For the KARE 11 News Extra, I'm John Croman.